That's bad.
Alright, what's up guys? I figured since we're waiting on a bunch of parts, not a bunch of parts, a few parts for the S10 here. Waiting on the drive shaft, belt, spark plug wires, which I remembered after I filmed the last video that I just happened to have a set of the 45 degree or 135, whatever they are, spark plug wires right there on the floor from the RX-7. So I could have used those, but oh well. I'll end up needing those probably on the 55. Anyway, yeah, we're waiting on some stuff for this, drive shaft parts, and a few other things. Still haven't put the throttle cable in. I'm really kind of dragging my feet with like the last 3 or 4 things this thing needs to run. So I figured while we're waiting on that stuff, let's move our attention back to the Malibu here. Now, you guys haven't seen a whole lot of the Malibu. I know I've said it before, but for anybody who hasn't seen the videos, this is not my car. This is my buddy Sean's car. It's just an old school street race grudge Malibu, ladder bar in the back, which is pretty unusual, I think. At least for these, because these cars are factory triangulated 4-link, which usually you can make work really well, but I think that this was done so long ago that it was before anybody really thought of bar angle adjustments and stuff like that, so there wasn't like the weld-in stuff that there are today. So back in like 83 or 84, which is allegedly when this thing was taken off the street and made basically just a race car, people just knew ladder bars worked really well, so that's what they threw on this car. And for the longest time, up until I think last year, this was a small block Chevy car. Had a 383 and a 406 in it, and he finally gave in to the bug and tossed a 5.3 in it. And I think it's a VS 80 or 85. I don't know. It's a hefty size turbo. Obviously BTR intake, which I love that intake, but it likes a lot of RPM. More than this thing's turning yet. Still trying to get comfortable with the setup. And it used to have that Power Glide right there in it. That is now mine. I traded him for a Turbo 400. Not the Turbo 400 that's in this thing. This is one that he just had kind of on the shelf. I think it's his dad's transmission. Just to keep running the car for this year until he dropped it off here to get rewired. Yeah, we were fighting this thing a bunch with the transmission and just not having the right converter in it and things like that. And then we decided that for this car's weight, the tire size, things like that, the surface it was going to be on, we all thought that the Turbo 400 gave it a better starting ratio than the Power Glide would. And he didn't want to mess with the rear end a bunch to change the gearing. So here we are. This thing should run pretty darn good once all the bugs are worked out of it. He was having a bunch of issues with the car just being horrendously inconsistent. And decided that it came down to, a little bit of it came down to the wiring. So he dropped it off here and he was like, just rip all the wiring out of it. Let's start fresh. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And he was like, please? And I was like, get fucked. And finally he was like, look man, I'm not a wire. I can't wire. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. So little does he know, I'm also not a wire. I mean, I know how to splice things together and catch heat shrink on fire, but that's kind of about it. Ignore this, we'll talk about that in a second. But you can see here, I mean, this is what was left of the factory fuse block. Real gorgeous looking. Ended up cutting that out. Still have to come up with some sort of plate to block that off. Might just leave that up to him. And the dash was already out of it, so that made things nice and easy. You gotta love that gauge mount. Between yesterday and today, I've just been going through running wires, trying to tidy things up. Got the relay board mounted. I still have to do 2 more mounts to hold it down. Maybe just 1 would be fine. I mean, the way it is now, it doesn't move, it can't go anywhere, but I think at least 1 more would give me more peace of mind. And first and foremost, this is a race car. So when it comes to race cars and wiring, I always think of keep things as visible and as easy to service as possible. Because, you know, things vibrate, things shake loose, wires rip out of connectors, they're shorts, things like that. So on something where I want it to look really good and the wire's kind of hidden, everything's tucked nice, that doesn't really transfer well to race cars when you're like in between rounds trying to find out like why the boost controller didn't work, why this, why that. So the wiring is tidy, everything has its own place, everything's ran kind of where it needs to run, but I also wanted to make sure that everything, you could trace the whole wiring with your eyes, you could see everything, everything's easy to get to. That's kind of how I approach race car wiring. Another thing I want to say is ignore those 2 battery cables down there. Those need to get cut and shortened, but for the time being, that's how we have them. I need to get ends for those cables and a heat shrink, but aside from that, I think everything else looks pretty fine. I've got it ran about the way I can. Although, now that I'm saying that, I do see one way that I wish I ran things different. I wish that all these wires from the switch panel up there that you can't see, I got the switch panel up there, and all the wires are coming down through here, along that. I wish that I ran those along with these through there and up and around, but like I said, it is easy to get to, easy to see everything. We know that all the switch panel wires go through there, and then the wires out to the front of the car are down there. Everything kind of has its place. All the engine wiring goes through the hole behind the intake. But yeah, I think the switch panel will work really well there. It's nice and comfortable to get to. He has about the same reach I do, so you're kind of like sitting in the car and it's, you know, right here, easy to get to, easy to hit the button, easy to flip all the switches off in case anything goes wrong. And another thing I like to do that makes things a lot easier that, you know, gets kind of neglected is I will use one color wire for that circuit throughout the entire thing. So like for instance, green wire for the fuel pump. The fuel pump wire is green all the way. If you see a green wire, you know it's the fuel pump. Yellow for the headlights. If you see a yellow wire, I mean, aside from those relay wires, of course, but as far as the wire from the switch panel down to the relay board, and then out of the relay board, if you see a yellow wire, you know it's headlights. And then blue for the fans, like I said, green for the fuel pump, things like that. That's just something that I started doing a while ago that's kind of obvious, but a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just use whatever scrap they have laying around. That shit bugs the fuck out of me when you're trying to trace down something and you're just like, man, it was a blue wire here, now there's a green wire over here, I don't know where the blue wire went. So the only wires that I have left to hook up are the PWM wire from the ECU to the MAC valve, which is that black one that's dangling right there. That has to get hooked up into the inputs outputs. And then I've got to hook up the trans brake wires, which this transmission doesn't have a trans brake, so for now it's just going to be the 2-step wires. But once he does get the new transmission built and in the car, he should be able to just jump right into those. And like I said, I got to shorten those battery cables, and I think that was about it. I think everything else is hooked up. So theoretically, this thing should fire up right now. I don't know what tune is in the thing, but whatever tune was last in it. That's just race car stuff, man. They're having an issue with the O2 sensor being too close to the end, so at idle it would like fluctuate a ton trying to correct and then correct and then correct. So they just threw this on real quick and it's been fine since, so they just left it. That's the stuff I love about race cars, man. They're just, as nice as it is to see a car that has a bunch of form to it, I think a car that has a ton of function to it is really nice too. So like that, it looks ridiculous, but I think it's awesome. You can see here where I've got the wires coming off of the relay board out to the front. So like I said, blue wire's fans, yellow is headlights. I still have to hook that one up. So that's why I have this just kind of sat here. Oh, and I have to hook up the ground for the fans. The power wire is ran, but I have to hook up the ground. I am having like an internal struggle on putting a loom over this or not. It would obviously look a ton better with loom on it, so I might toss some on it. But yeah, aside from that, this thing's just about ready to go back to him. 5 wires left to hook up, and then I can mess with the tune a little bit, just have to change in the tune the stuff like the inputs outputs for the most part. And then I'll probably redo the boost controller so that it's set up a pretty simple way. Just a PWM table that is time by manifold pressure boost. So we'll just put it at like 100% duty cycle for the boost controller below, like, let's say 10 pounds. And then at like 10.5 pounds, we'll put 50. And then like 11 pounds, we'll put 10%. So that it'll just hover right at like 10.5 pounds of boost. That's what we're doing in jack right now. And like, it's kind of a stupid way to do it, but it's super simple and it seems to work so far. The Holley built-in boost controllers with like the PID tables and stuff, they work good in theory, but in practice they kind of suck. And that's not just me, that's like almost everyone I've talked to about it. Most of the people that I've talked to like to run like the nitrous controller to control the MAC valve, which is just this little thing. So it gets manifold pressure in through there, and then the computer will take a reading and it'll either put boost pressure at the bottom of the wastegate or the top of the wastegate to help regulate it. Just that little deal, and it's a little valve that fluctuates like 9 trillion times a second. So yeah, I think I'm going to hook up a couple things. We'll probably plug the battery back in and see if we can get this thing fired up, because this car hasn't ran in like 2 or 3 months, I think. So it'd be nice to just let this thing idle for like 2-3 minutes, get up to temperature, and then I'll finish up a few things and then give Sean a call and be like, hey, come get it. After rewiring everything, reconnecting the battery is so fucking scary to me. It's like, did I fuck something up? I know that this wiring is kind of ugly, but it's all pretty easy to get to. It's all wired correctly, and I didn't want to mess with it. This battery's probably dead as hell, too. Okay, that's not the correct nut. Alright, I gotta find the nut for this thing. Battery is hooked up. I think those fuses are good. Here's the part where we start looking for smoke. See anything pouring out yet? Ouch. Alright. None of the wires are hot, so that's good. Let's check fuel pump. Oh yeah. We got fuel pump. Let's check ignition. Oh baby. We have fuel pump. And we have ignition. Alright. I'm gonna turn ignition off. Let's roll it over. Oh yeah. That thing rolls over like a motherfucker. Hell yeah. Which is surprising considering I think, yeah. You might be able to see it. I left the battery cable on the starter loose. I haven't tightened that up yet. So it's crazy that it rolled over that fast. Let me kill the battery. We'll tighten that back up. And then I think we can try and fire this thing up. Alright. Got the starter cable bolted up. Did have to trim it a little bit because it started off life as like a ground cable from a battery from a front post. So had to trim that a little bit so that I knew for sure it wasn't going to like wiggle or just touch anything. So you can see how easy the switch panel is to get to. And this is just some angle brackets whipped up real quick because eventually he wants to put a full cage in this thing, so I didn't want to do anything too extravagant with it, knowing that this was temporary. And then, like I said, the trans brake button, I'm pretty sure I said this before, I moved it. Initially he had it here, and then he bumped it one time on accident trying to drive the thing. So I moved it, I made these washers, like these really thin sheet metal washers, and moved it in so that it, like when you're fully on the wheel, it's going to be kind of hard to grab. Oh, maybe if you have big whopper hands. So, ignition, fuel pump, fans, headlights, and these two don't go to anything yet. I have those wires ran so that all you got to do is just connect to the outside of the relays, and then you're all good. Let me make sure this thing's in park. foot on the brake. Ooh, it wanted to. Come on, you cold-blooded asshole. He loves his carburetor so much that he left a carbureted tune in it, so you have to pump the gas a bunch and it doesn't like to start in the cold. Come on. It might just be out of fuel. Yeah, I think we might be out of gas. Let me go check that. But I at least know that the starter button can hold up to that. Just sitting on it. Oh, the foam. Got the dang foam in here. Ah, I knew there'd be one. Shit looks dry as a bone. Alright, that's what it looks like before. Come on. Yeah, we're dry as a bone. Okay, so that's not happening. Well, let me turn this off. Kind of a lackluster whimper to the end of the video here. But we know that it all works. You can smell the grape additive in the fuel. It smells like those Swisher Sweets cigars. Real grapey flavored. But yeah, you can see that, well, I was about to say that you can see that the tune needs a little bit of work, but without fuel, cards generally don't run. So, like I said, I've got 5 wires left to hook up, and then this thing is done with the wiring, at least until he decides to add anything else to it. But yeah, this thing should be pretty rad. Hopefully this coming season we can just test the hell out of this thing, probably at either Onondaga or US 131 in Martin, Michigan. So this year, if we can just keep ticking away at it, start getting the thing faster and faster and faster. Like I said, last year, he didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to test this car. And I know that this year he wants to run the thing a bunch, but I know he works a lot. So we'll kind of see what happens there. I know he wants to take the thing to pretty much every no prep he can, like all the Detroit Hood TV ones. Probably enter it in like a bunch of G-body shootouts. I think it could be real competitive once we can spend like 2-3 weeks just testing the car, figuring out what it likes, what it doesn't like, and things like that. Just all the simple little stuff. And I know that there's a few things on it that need to be changed to be actually competitive, but I think it is an amazing start. So that's probably where we're going to end the video. I know everybody loves the G-body, and man, this thing is tooted up in the front. Did he ever put 28s on it, or are these still the 26s? These look like 28s. Yeah, he's got the 28 10.5s on it. Okay, I know for a while he had 26s on the car. And then what size are the fronts? These also look like 28s. Yep, 28 4.5s. So that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And for everybody who says that I never finish anything, you need to get your story straight. That's old news. I'm finishing everything lately. Got the S10 almost finished. That was built in like 3 weeks. Got the Malibu just about ready to go. Like I said, 5 wires left. Jack, we basically built that twice this year. What else? Let's see. We built and broke and traded off James Brown. And hopefully here in the next couple of weeks we can get the Fiero running. Can't wait for that. I'm so excited to hear that thing. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing the video with your friends. Everything that helps out the channel. If you want any merch, first link in the description below. If you need injectors, much like these Snake Eater 1500s, you can go to Snake Eater Performance and use code Snydertron for 10% off your order. If you need any sort of fuel fittings or AN line, anything like that, Shipbox Supply, use code Snydertron for 5% off your order. Thank you guys for subscribing and clicking the bell to get the notifications when the videos go up. I'll see you next time.